Okay, so when Elliot and I last left off on Thursday night on a romantic date of a shir, and then I went to the wedding and it was crazy. I couldn't even get in there to dance. I was like nuts. Anyway, we left off on where are we? We are on Tes Zayin Amud Beis. We are 2 lines from the bottom. The Gemara says, and I'm not wearing my coat because I want to leave soon. I'm just cold. Amar Rabba, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marasa. Gadol Talmud Torah yos mi kibud aveim. That learning of Torah is greater than the mitzvah of kibud aveim. Shekal osam shanim shahay Yaakov Avinu beveis Ever lo nenas. That the whole time that Yaakov Avinu was in, because we know that when after Yaakov quote unquote stole the brachas from Esav, so then Esav wanted to kill him. So Yaakov ran away to go to Yitzchak and Rachel, and Yitzchak and Rivka sent Yaakov away. So it says that he went to he was going to Love, and on the way there he stopped at Yeshiva Shem Ve'ever, and he learned it for 14 years. So now the next Amud, until we finish the parak, is now going to be showing how Yaakov Avinu was not punished for not doing Kibbud Av for the 14 years that he was learning Torah. So Gemara says, Damar Mar, turning now to Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Why did we have to? The Torah says how old Yishmael was when he died. Who cares? Like, why is the Torah giving us the age of Rishaim? We don't care about that, even though Yishmael did tshuva before he died. But why do we care to know how old Yishmael was? So the Gemara says, the only reason that Yishmael's age is mentioned in the Torah is so that we can figure out how old was Yaakov Avinu to be able to determine how old he was. We're on the first line on Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. So he says on 17a, the Chsiv, it says, that Yishmael lived for 137 years. So now the Gemara is going to show how Yaakov Avinu, how we determined his age from that, and then from there we're going to be able to show that he wasn't punished for the 14 years that he didn't do Kibbud Aveim for Yitzchak. So Kama Kashish Yishmael Yitzchak. How much older was Yishmael than Yitzchak? Our Beis Shinin. He was 14 years older than Yitzchak. And how do we know that? Because it says D'chsiv Avram ben Shmon Shana b'Shei Shanim b'Ledas Hagar et Yishmael la'Avram, that Avram Avinu was 86 years old when Hagar gave birth to Yishmael. And then it says D'chsiv Avram ben Shana b'Hivalid Loas Yitzchak. We know that Avram Avinu was 100 years old when he gave birth to Yitzchak. So 100 minus 86 equals 14. So we know that Yitzchak was 14 years younger than Yishmael. So now, Uksiv, Yitzchak ben Shishim Shana b'Ladas or something. Yitzchak was 60 years old when he had Yaakov and Esav. So Bar Kama Hav Yishmael K'de Isyalad Yaakov. So how old was Uncle Yishmael when his brother Yitzchak gave birth, had Yaakov and Esav? Again, it's 60 plus 14 equals 74. Bar Shimon Bar he was 74 years old. Kama Pasha Mishneh, and how much longer did he live after that? Shtinuslas, he lived 63 years, because he lived 137 years, minus 74 equals 63. Okay, so that's right now we're just trying to again calculate Yaakov's life. So now we said, Britannia, we learned. Yaakov Avinu b'shash and Isbarach ma'aviv ben shishim v'shalosh shana. The Yaakov Avinu was 63 years old when he got the bracha from Yitzchak. And what happened? Ubova Perak Meis Yishmael. At the same time that he was getting the bracha from Yitzchak, a lot was going on, because what else was happening? Yishmael was dying at the same time. How do we know that Yishmael died at the same time that Yaakov was getting the bracha? Because D'chsiv, Vayar Esav ki beirach, that Esav saw that Yitzchak gave a bracha to Yaakov, so he got very upset. And what did he do? In order to upset, he was rebellious. So in order to upset his parents, because he saw that they gave the bracha to Yaakov instead of to Esav, so it says Vayelach Esav el Yishmael Vayikach es machlas bas Yishmael achos nevayos. That Esav went to Yishmael, even though Yitzchak and Rivka didn't want Yaakov marrying anyone from Yishmael, but Esav went and he married someone from Yishmael. And it says that he took Machlas, the daughter of Yishmael, who was the sister of Nevayos. So the Gemara says now, Imash Meshinemer Bas Yishmael, since I know that it says that she was the daughter of Yishmael, so Eni Yodeah She Achos Nevayos, don't I know that she was the sister of Nevayos? Why do I have to say that Machlas was the sister of Nevayos, who was Yishmael's son? We already said that she's the daughter of Yishmael. So what happened then? So it must be Melamed Shekitche Yishmael Umeis, that Yishmael was Mekadesh, and the Mefarshim say it doesn't mean they didn't have Kiddushin then, and certainly the non-Jews didn't have Kiddushin. But it says that Esav was Mekadesh, his daughter Machlas, to Esav, then he died, and then Nevayos, her brother, stepped in and he finished the act of marriage that was taking place. So therefore the Torah says that not only was she the daughter of Yishmael, but she was also the sister of Nevayos. So right now we're saying, so Shtinu Tzla, so we take that he was 63 years old when he left his father, because that's how old he was when he got the brachos. Varbeisar ad Misyal Yosef, and he was 14 years that he was by Lavan, because the Torah says that he told Lavan, I'll work 7 years for each wife that you're giving me. So he worked 7 years for Rachel, first for Leah, it turns out, and then 7 years for Rachel. And then, so that's Hashiv and Shiva. So now, he was 63, so now he's 77 years old, because 63 plus 14 equals 77. Uksiv, and then it says, Yosef ben Shlosh, and then he left Lavan, because it says that after he had Yosef, then it said, the Torah says that he wanted to leave Lavan. Uksiv, Yosef ben Shloshim Shana be'amdol ifnei Paro, that Yosef was 30 years old when he stood before Paro. So therefore, how old does that make Yaakov? Again, he was 77 plus 30. Hamas Ushava, that's 107 years old. Shav Desava, you to add on the 7 years of plenty that they had. Remember when before the hunger came, there were 7 years of plenty. So Yaakov didn't send the brothers down to Mitzrayim during the 7 years of plenty. There was a lot of food to go around. So for the 7 years, you add that on to when he was 107, that's 114. The Tarti the Kanfa, and then the 2 years of hunger that they had. And after he had the 2 years of hunger, then Yaakov sends the brothers down to Mitzrayim in order to confront Yosef. And that's when the whole story of Yosef confronts his brothers. And then Yosef tells them, okay, go back and get Dad, go get Yaakov and bring him down to Mitzrayim. So when Yaakov meets Paro, Uksiv, Ayomer Paro Yaakov Kami Meishanecha Yecha. So Paro asks Yaakov, how old are you? Vayomer Yaakov al Paro Yimeshanecha Gurai Shloshim Ma'ashana. He said I was 130 years old. So the Gemara says, wait a second, we just showed by the calculation that he only should have been 116. So why did he tell Paro that he was 130? So it must be. So he should only have been 116 years old based on our calculation. That the 14 years that he was learning in the yeshiva of Shem Ve'ever, it does not count that in the calculation of how old he was. And again, the Gemara is just bringing this down to show that he's not going to be punished for not doing kibbut av. The Tanya that we learned, Yaakov Ve'ever, Mutzman Arbash Esrei Shana, that Yaakov was hiding away learning Torah for 14 years in the yeshiva of Sheva Aver. Aver Mace, and Aver died, and Shem had died earlier, now Aver died, who was Rosh Yeshiva. So Aver Mace, La'achar Sheyard Yaakov Avinu La'am Naharaim Shtei Shanim, he died after 2 years. Yatzim Misham Avalo La'am Naharaim, then he left there and he went to Am Naharaim. Nimsa Kasha Amar Al Habe'er, Ben Shivim Sheva Shana, he was 63 when he left Yitzchak. 14 years that he stayed learning in Yeshiva Shem Ve'ever, 63 plus 14 equals 77. So you see that he was not like we had calculated before. We see he was 77 years old. Those 14 years don't count. And we know and how do we know that Yaakov was not punished for the 14 years that he was learning in Shever, that he wasn't doing kibbut av v'eim? The Tanya Nimsa Yosef Shapirish Me'aviv Esrim Shtayim Shana Kishem Shapirish Yaakov Avinu Me'aviv, that Yosef was separated, that Yosef was sold as a slave, and he was separated from Yaakov. Yaakov didn't know where he was for 22 years. Was Mida Keneged Mida, was a punishment because he was away from his father for 22 years. So Gemara says, wait a second. The Yaakov Tlasin V'Shisan have, but he was away from his father for 36 years. We just proved the calculation. It wasn't 40, it was 36 years. It wasn't 22 years, it was 36 years. So what do you see? El Arbeser, the Habib Beisaver, Lo Chashiv. So from here the Gemara proves out that if some Talmud Torah is greater than the mitzvah of Kibbut Aveim, because he was not punished, Yosef was only hidden from him, or the punishment, they didn't know where he was for 22 years, not for the 36 years that he was away, because the 14 years he was learning Torah did not count against it. And just as an aside, so the Gemara asks, Sof, in our calculation, the Beis Lavan Esrin Shnan Havin, he was only in Lavan's house for 20 years. Why do we get the 22-year punishment? Where do you get that from? Gemara answers, it took him 2 years from when he left Lavan until he got back to his parents' house. And how do we know that? The Tanya Yatzim Aram Naharayim Uvalo Lusukos, he came to Sukkos, Asa Sham Shmona Asra Chodesh, he was there for 18 months. Shenam Rav Yaakov Nasu Sukosa, and it says Vayivin Lo Bayis from Mitnei Asa Sukkos, he made Sukkos, which are plural. V'Veisel Asa Shisha Chadashim Hikr Zvakim, he stayed there for 6 months and he brought karbanos. So because of the 20 years that he was by Lavan, and then the 2 years that it took him to get back, so So that's going to be the 22 years that he was punished for not doing Kibbut Avein. Hadron Lach Megillah Nikras. We finished the first parak of Megillah. Okay, turning to the next parak. Now we're going to get back a little bit into the halachos of how you're supposed to read a Megillah, and we actually had some of this in the first parak. So the Mishnah says, if someone reads a Megillah out of order, he's reading the psukim out of order, you are not Yotzi Yechiv to do the Megillah. Kar al Peh, if someone reads it by heart, Kar Targum Chalashin, if he reads it in any in Targum, which is Onkelos, that's like the accepted Targum next to Hebrew is considered to be the accepted language. If he reads it in Targum or in any other language that's not Hebrew, Lo Yatsi, you're not going to be Yotzi Yechiv either. But you could read a Megillah if it's in a foreign language for someone that speaks that language, meaning you could write a Megillah in English and read it to someone who understands English. You can't write a Megillah in English and read it to someone who reads only Chinese. Okay, if they don't understand English, that won't work. But if let's say you have someone who let's say you're listening to Megillah, you don't understand Hebrew. You know Hebrew, but without Art Scroll, you're not able to understand the words. But the Hebrew is different. That if the Megillah is read in Hebrew, even if someone doesn't understand it, they're still going to be able to listen to the Megillah. Let's say a person was reading it like he was starting and stopping when he was reading it, so he was like he was doing it, but he wasn't reading it all at one time. Or if let's say he was falling asleep when he was doing it, like he was nodding off. The Gemara will explain what that means. So he's still going to be Yotzei the Chiyuv to do the Megillah. Hayakosva Darsha Umagia. Let's say he was either writing a Megillah, or he was darshaning the Megillah, or he was correcting a Megillah, and as he was doing it, he was reading along word by word as he was doing it. In Kivin Libo Yatza. So if he had in mind to do the Chiyuv of Mikra Megillah, to listen to the Megillah, then he's going to be good. And he doesn't have to listen to it again. Haya Ksuva Bisam Uvesikra Uvekmos Uvekantamam. If let's say a person was writing it with all these different types of inks that they have, or ala noyer or ala diftera, or let's say he wrote it on niyar or diftera, which are different types of papers, the Gemara will explain, but he didn't do it on parchment. Lo yatsu, you're not yotzi the chiyuv to read from the Megillah. Acha take suva ashuris al sefer with yo, as we did in the first parak. It has to be written in the ashuris script. It has to be done on parchment. It has to be done with this particular black ink. So Gemara asks, how do we know that a person who reads it out of order is not going to fulfill his obligation? So Gemara answers, Amar Rava, the Amar Krad says in the Megillah, Kiksavim v'chizmanim. They should do it like the way that was written and in the way that they did it in the proper time. Ma'azmanim u'mafreya lo, just like you can't reverse the order of the 14th and 15th. You have to have the 14th of Adar come first and then the 15th. So too, avksavim l'mafreya lo, that you can't do what they're writing. You can't jump out of order when you're doing it. It has to be done in a particular order. So where it says that's not a good raya. Midi kriya ksiva hacha. It's not talking about reading. Asiya ksiva is talking about that you're going to be doing it. T'chsiv lios osim eshnei ayam, that you're doing the 2 days. So how do you know still that if you do it out of order that you're not going to be yotzi yechiv Megillah? Elam hacha. It says in the pasuk t'chsiv vayamim ha'elan niskrim v'nasim, that these days were remembered and they were done. That ma'asiyah l'mafreya, that just like when you have the asiyah, again, you can't do it out of order, that you have to have the 14th and then you have to have the 15th. So too also, when it comes to remembering the Megillah, you have to, the reading of the Megillah, it can't be done out of sequence. And the Mepharshim say that another explanation for Akares and Megillah Mafreya, the reason why it doesn't count is because the whole nace of the Megillah is that you see these sequence of events that are taking place that make it seem like everything's random, and then as you keep reading the Megillah, you see that it's not random, everything ties together, and that there was a nace that took place that Hashem saved us. So if you're reading it out of order, you're not going to get the context of the story. You're not going to see you're not going to know who Haman was. You're not going to know that Vashti was killed. You're not going to know that it was only because Esther was put into place, and that led later on to the nace of the Megillah taking place. So they say, therefore, that's why you have to read the Megillah without skipping it. If you skip it, you're going to completely lose the miracle, the understanding the miracle that took place. Tana, we also learned in another brayso v'chein b'halal, that just like you can't read out of order for the Megillah, the same thing when it comes to halal, that you have to read halal straight. You can't jump around by doing the different piyutim and halal out of order. V'chein kriya shema, and the same thing with shema, that you can't read the psukim out of order. Although I think we're going to see later that you could read the parshios. Could be done out of order. You could do v'hafta, you could do and then vayomer, and then v'hayu, like you could move them around. And if it's feeling the same thing with Shemona Esrei also, they have to be read in a particular order. So Gemara asks, how do we know that halal has to be read straight without skipping around. Rabba Amar D'chsiv v'mizrach Hashem Hashem that we say in Hallel, we say from the rising of the sun to the setting of the sun. So just like the sun rises and then it sets, and if there's an order that it does that, so too when you're reading Hallel, it has to be in a particular order that you have to go straight. Rabbi Yosef Amar Zeh Hayom Asa Hashem, that this is the day that Hashem made, and just like the day again goes in order, it doesn't start with the evening and then go to sunrise. So too now that we say that you have to do it in order. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak b'tem Rav Acha bar Yaakov Amar Mehacha. We learn it from here. It says Me'ata v'ad olam, that it's forever, that it's supposed to be done in the same way forever and ever. You're not supposed to be changing it in the way that you're doing it. You know what? We will stop here because we're going to get into another Gemara. This Gemara is going to be longer going into tomorrow. Okay.